I'm going to now open the floor to questions. There's a gentleman in front who's been raising his hand. If the microphone could be given to him, please. And then I'll take questions from the room floor.
Thank you. I live in a Toronto housing unit right next to Regent Park called Rivertown. It's 2 years old. There is not 10 square feet of the entire neighborhood that has been built properly. I want to know why the architect still has a job with the city and why the people who are supposed to inspect this stuff don't. The plumbing's wrong, the electrical's wrong, the paint has no primer underneath it. There's drywall on the outside of the buildings. Indoor drywall on the outside of the building. I've built radio and television stations for the last 20 years. I know a little bit about what I'm doing, and none of it is done properly. I watched a guy the other day spend the entire afternoon leveling out the dirt where the garden's going to be. The next day, they dug a meter-deep hole through the entire thing and dumped some more brown dirt in it that they moved from somewhere else. There is $250,000 that last week I saw go up in smoke. $80,000 worth of faucets that were bought from the States that can't get spare parts here. One of them blew up and hit the ceiling in the ladies' apartment the other day. They've all got to be replaced. The sidewalk at the back of my building isn't wide enough for me to safely drive my wheelchair down. They put a new ramp at the back door. While they were putting the concrete in, I said, that won't do. But the lady from HSI came over and said, oh, it meets code. It doesn't matter if it's functional.
Could I ask you to ask a question, please?
My question is, when are you going to hire somebody that knows what the hell they're doing to oversee this?
Absolutely share your frustration, and unlike some of my...
I have no idea what...
Okay, could we let Mr. Rossi answer the question? All right,
One of the reasons that I'm running for mayor, I've never held political office before, is because I believe there is an insufficient culture of accountability at City Hall. And I'm glad I'm not running against you because you do it and you say it more articulately than I did. But the reality is that we do need to bring a sense of accountability. There have to be consequences when a job is not well done. They're not. Those people just continue on. How are we going to fix that in the future? Step number one. The current chief planner of the City of Toronto is retiring. One of the most important tasks and opportunities that the next mayor of the City of Toronto has is to hire the next chief planner and to make sure a couple of things. One, to do a global search to make sure that we're getting the absolutely best person that we can for the job. Two, though, if we're going to have a global search where we attract, and it could well be someone from right here in Toronto, but if we want to get the very best person, then that chief planner position can't be 4 layers down in the bureaucracy. It has to be in a position where it's reporting directly to the mayor and has some senior heft to be able to knock heads and make sure that you coordinate schedules, to make sure that people aren't coming back the next day to either tear up a road or tear up the grounds, because there is a long-term plan in place. It also means that that chief planner has to take part in a process that's very similar to what Vancouver and New York already do, which is to work with communities ahead of development to build very detailed plans. They call them secondary zoning or precinct plans. You can call it pre-zoning, whatever. It's the community bringing their wisdom to bear about what's needed and then putting that out to the development community to build as of right. So that's how you...
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Sir,
And the thing is that I
Sir, there are other people who need to ask other questions. I only have time for one more on the floor. And I'm sure Mr. Rossi will continue discussion with you after the discussion. Sir, if you would.
Hi, my name is Todd Simcover. I'm in the Critical Disability Studies program at York University. One of the things I feel very passionate about is issues about accommodation and accessibility. What I'm hearing a lot today is people talking about raising money and how to put more money into creating more accessible washrooms or having more elevators and so on. But from my experience, I know many people, friends of mine have mobility issues. From what I'm hearing, from my own observations, there's many public and private buildings in Toronto that do not have wheelchair or accessible washrooms. I understand that all new buildings by law have to have wheelchair accessible washrooms, but the older buildings are not required to have accessible washrooms for people with disabilities until several years down the road. So what I'm wondering is, as mayor, can you mandate that all older buildings, such as restaurants, stores, that do not have wheelchair accessible washrooms, to post a sign in the window that will state whether or not they have a wheelchair accessible washroom?
I think that's an excellent suggestion, and certainly worthy of talking to the Restaurant Association and so on. It should be fairly easy to do that. I'd love to be able to wave a magic wand and get everything retrofitted, but that clearly isn't going to happen immediately. One other thing I did want to say on the accommodation issue that's very important, and that I've experienced because of friends with autistic children who have run into an enormous bylaw problem in the city of Toronto around how the city classifies and deals with group homes and restricts the ability of people to settle into different homes, into different neighborhoods, unless there's a certain amount of distance between the two. And it's grown out of fears communities have had with respect to halfway houses for recovering criminals. I think the fact that the same bylaw is being applied in the same way to autistic children, to other people with intellectual disabilities and challenges is absolutely unconscionable. And to try to say and force people to live only in certain areas or must be a certain distance, a certain number of homes across is demeaning and inhuman and has to be withdrawn.
Thank you, Mr.